I have great news for you today. There's a power in the universe that can lift your life to its highest level. It can change illness into health. It can bring peace amidst turmoil. It can bring companionship and happiness where there used to be loneliness. It can bring success out of failure and victory out of defeat. This power will respond to you because this power dwells within you. And this is what we celebrate on this show, Say Yes to Life. So welcome to Say Yes to Life. When you say yes to life, you activate the power that caused the entire universe to be. When you say yes to life, you open yourself up to the kingdom of heaven the great master teacher spoke of over 2 centuries ago. When you say yes to life, you bring into your life happier, healthier, more productive, more loving, more prosperous living. My name is Reverend Dr. Nick Angotti, and I welcome you to Say Yes to Life. In the past, you've seen a number of talks that I've given, but every once in a while, you've seen an interview. Well, today we're going to have an interview, and my special guest today is Dawn M. Stasak. And Dawn is the author of The Guru, A Guru in the Office, and also the author of a new book, A Fish Out of Water. Now, Dawn's had been working in the office environment for over 19 years, including commercial, nonprofit, and large and small companies, both as a permanent and temporary employee. She holds multiple degrees, as well as a bachelor degree in science, a bachelor degree of science in business administration, and a concentration in sales and marketing from DeVry University. And up until 2 years ago, when she was when her second child, her son, came along, she had been working up to 19 years as senior administrative assistant in Fortune 500 companies. Well, Don, I certainly stumbled over that one. So I guess the first question is, correct me for anything I may have missaid.
Well, I do have 2 children. I have a son who's going to be 4 next month, and a daughter who will be 2 in November.
That's right. It was your daughter.
Yes.
When she came along, you decided to leave the corporate world.
Yes.
That's right.
Yep.
So the book, once again, is The Guru in the Office, 50 Ways to Remember Your Spirit in the Corporate World. Mm-hmm. Whoa, how to remember it. I mean, I know that you've been in New Thought, and you've been in spiritual movement for many years, right?
Yes, several years.
Yeah, several years. And when did you come up with this idea, and what kind of perpetuated the idea of this book?
Well, actually, my husband gave me the idea for the book. We were going to school to get our bachelor's degrees at DeVry together, and we took an English class, and I had to do some writing exercises. And as I was working on my schoolwork and working in the office, I was always into reading New Thought books, books by Hay House, Oprah's Remember Your Spirit books, such as that, her book club. And my husband said, you're into these things, why don't you go ahead and write a book yourself? And I knew I certainly needed it. Things to remember my spirit at work, if you're tense or you have to deal with certain people. I needed something that spoke to me and something I can do during my day to make sure that I could bring my spirit into the work day.
Sure. Now, I know there was 4 major points that you used in the book, and I originally had thought of asking you the question how you prepared to go to work, but I think that probably comes in from the attitude of gratitude. Would you talk a little bit about attitude of gratitude?
Sure. Actually, the attitude of gratitude is the foundation for most everything that you would set upon in your day, whether you're going to work or whether you're doing anything. When you wake up in the morning, if you start with an attitude of gratitude, it sets you in a better mood for the rest of the day. Yes.
And what, if you want to share, what kind of process do you go through then?
Well, when I was working in the corporate world, what I would have to do is when I get up in the morning, sometimes you wake up and you say, "Oh God, morning." You'd wake up and you'd say, "Oh, good morning." And you want to have an attitude of gratitude with being grateful for even having a job or even having a place and a purpose. Because if you wake up and have a negative attitude right away, it just brings you down. You start at a level down here. Sure. But you want to wake up in the morning, you want to get yourself up to a higher level so that you are acting and functioning from that level.
Okay. And I remember when I was going through some really rough times way back, and I remember sitting in my living room one day and just closing my eyes and going over kind of an inventory of everything I had. I had pots and pans, I had forks and spoons, and I had everything. I had the beautiful pictures on the wall, the furniture, the TV, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that as I thank myself and thank God for all those individual things, that it certainly helped to bring me back to center and into that attitude of gratitude.
Absolutely.
Is there any specific that you do, or is it adjusted according to the nature of the morning?
Well, nowadays it's definitely different than it used to be. And what you would have to do is you modify it to suit your own life and what's going on in your life right now. So whereas before I would wake up and be grateful to have a job to go to, have some income coming in, my great coworkers I always loved seeing, and then nowadays I wake up and I'm so grateful. Sometimes I wake up with my son lying next to me because he comes with us in the middle of the night, or I wake up and I'm just so happy to have a roof over my head, that my husband's working. There's a lot of strife and turmoil in the world. So when you wake up and you look around, you start with where you are now. You look around and you just are grateful for everything that you have. Then you think of more and more things and you get into a better and better mood, and then you can radiate that out to everybody.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned your son, because I failed to mention that on my gratitude list. It wasn't just all the belongings. It was the wonderful people in my life, including my daughters and my parents, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, going back to the 4 points, the second point, major point of your book, or bullet point or talking point, writing point, I suppose, would be inspiration on the road. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. What I would want to do also after you wake up in the morning and you look around, you're grateful for everything and all the wonderful people you have in your life, is to also bring another inspirational thought with you before you leave the house. So I'd read from a book of quotes next to my bed, or an inspirational card that I had on a card deck next to my bed from either Wayne Dyer or the Dalai Lama. And you hold a thought in your mind and you kind of meditate upon that for a second or two, and then I take that with me before I leave the house, and I think about that thought and think about how it's going to kind of set into my subconscious for the day, and kind of focus on a nice thought to bring with me through the day.
Do you have a story about what it was like before you started doing this compared to after?
Actually, yeah, it was just a kind of a downward spiral. Actually, I suffered from a panic attack in 1998, and I was working at an insurance company at the time, and it was a lot of deadlines. It was a lot of negativity where I was, and it was kind of a toxic work environment. But at the same time, I thought, the only thing I can change is myself. So that's when I got into reading all of the New Thought books and literature and things like that. And I started really listening to the CDs and thinking about things I could do to make myself feel better. And that was actually years before I wrote the book. These were things that I was actually living. Okay. But then that's when I thought to bring it all together, put it in a book format, and share it with other people.
Yes.
So what it was like before was that I would get worked up. I would really get worked up, with people and situations and things that were happening. And it's not to say that I never do. I still did. But now I had something to, I guess, refer to. Sure. And use as a foundation. And now I could look at my book and say, oh, I do this, this, and that brings me back to center in the workplace.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We're talking with Dawn Stazak, and her book is the Guru in the Office: 50 Ways to Remember Your Spirit in the Corporate World. And now, you mentioned a password. Yeah, there's a password. You talked about we need a password to get to our computer. What's your password in the book? I mean, not your password.
Right.
Explain to us, in the book you mentioned a password.
Well, that's one of the sneaky ways you can kind of give yourself some inspiration during the day, is if you have an inspirational password and turn it into an affirmation. So in your password you could say, I am thankful for, and then put what you're thankful for. And you use the number 4 because you want your password to be strong. You mix it with numbers and letters. numbers, or you can say, I'm a prosperous one if you're working on manifesting prosperity, or grateful to be, you know, and you try to think of how to put your words into numbers and make an affirmation out of it, so that every time you log into your computer in the morning, it's another way to kind of set a good affirmation into your head. And if you have to log off or log back on or log into different accounts, you could either use the same password or use different passwords, and you're doing really affirmations, so you're kind of killing two birds with one stone.
Excellent.
And you could even do that with numeric passwords as well. When you have to use a keyboard to get in maybe your telephone system, you know, it lines up with the alphabet as well. So you could do like a little 4-letter password, you know, like you know, if you're into religious, you could do the sign of the cross, you could do an X, you could do the word love, you know, anything like that, using your numbers and letters.
Excellent. Now, what about this 2 o'clock break? Yeah, you had mentioned that that it's important to not stay in the office for the lunch, but to actually take a break. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Well, actually, being an administrative assistant, I always was making meetings for everybody else, and then I came up with the idea to make a meeting for myself and mark the time as free. So if I needed to be in an actual meeting, I could, and mark the time as private. And this is just a kind of a reminder for yourself to breathe, to sit there and take a deep breath. I usually did it about 10 o'clock and about 2 o'clock. And I would just sit there and just for a moment, close my eyes and just take a deep breath and just to relax. Or I would get up and get a drink of water. You know, in the office, the atmosphere can get pretty dry with the circulated air, so you get some water to prevent headaches, or anything like that. Something that is a little reminder to just kind of calm and center yourself just for that second, just for a minute or two. And it's a way to just kind of check yourself and make sure you're not, you know, running on empty the whole day.
Exactly. Good. Now, we touched on it just briefly about how things have changed a little bit since since the kids have come along. But you mentioned before we started the show about the possibility of a third book.
Yes.
We'll get into the second book in a minute.
Yeah.
Possibility of the third book about what it's like being at home.
Yeah.
And how you can incorporate these ideas in your home life. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Actually, after I was able to be at home, what I did was think about all the things that I was going to do when I was at home, and I was going to market the book, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to market the book, spend time with the kids, and that was it. And actually what I did was take a walk in a labyrinth just to center myself, and I had William, somebody watching William at the time, and just to center myself on this new phase of my life that I knew I was going to be going into. And little did I know that when I exited the labyrinth, I came up with an idea for a second book, which was going to be A Guru in the Nursery, 50 Ways to Remember Your Spirit While Changing Diapers. And I thought, wow, that was a surprise. I thought, I really need to figure out how to do this in my new stage of life. So what that looks like is, you know, doing spiritual things with the kids, you know, being able to take them to church, being able to take them to a labyrinth, being able to do, you know, little fun things with them, while remembering God myself, because you can't, you know, separate yourself from your children when you're at home with them, obviously. So I think of like little things that I could do, such as maybe get some meditation time in when one of them is napping, because now my son does not nap. So it's really been a challenge to figure out, well, how am I going to maybe journal or you know, relax, you know, if my son is running all the time. So maybe he'll be doing a quiet time activity. I can journal at the kitchen table or something while he's, you know, playing with something. And you know, when Victoria was a newborn and I was trying to get her to go to sleep, I'd kind of play the game of putting her in her crib and then waiting a few minutes to see if she's going to cry or not. So I had like maybe about 5 minutes lag time, and I thought, you know what, I can do some yoga stretches. So I did some yoga stretches, sometimes right in her room, sometimes in the hallway outside her door. And I thought, well, I could do little things here and there to remember spirit, and just, it's going to look a little different. But how do you do this with being home with your little ones all day? It's very challenging, but it's been exciting to learn and to figure it out. So as I'm writing this book, it's the same thing that I needed in the beginning for working in the office, is that I really need this book myself. So I'm living it at the same time, and that's what's kind of taken a while on publishing, because I really need to make sure I get this down before I publish.